Promising Young Woman is the story of a young woman called Cassie, portrayed by Carey Mulligan. Today I'm going to provide a scene-by-scene summary of this movie. The movie starts with a scene in a nightclub. We see Cassie is super drunk and alone in a bar, and there are three men in the bar that are talking about her. While two of these men are talking dirty about her and are thinking of taking advantage of her, the third man, Jerry, who seems to be a nice, decent guy, stops them. And instead he himself goes to Cassie and asks if she's okay. And then when he realizes that Cassie has lost her phone, very politely he offers to share a ride with her to her home. Then we see them in a car. Cassie is still very drunk and half conscious. Then suddenly Jerry suggests that they go to his place and have a drink there instead of taking Cassie home. Come on, man, we thought you're cool. Cassie is half conscious and she does not say yes, but she does not say no either. So Jerry decides to take that as a yes and asks the driver to take them to his place instead. We're now in Jerry's apartment where we see that he's trying to get Cassie even more drunk. And then he starts to flirt with her, and then he starts kissing her. Cassie feels a bit sick and asks Jerry to let her lie down a bit. And Jerry decides to take this request as an invitation to have sex. When Cassie lies down, Jerry continues kissing her and starts to undress her. And at this point, Cassie starts complaining, but in a very weak, drunken voice. But Jerry chooses to ignore that by saying, "It's okay, you're safe." She repeatedly asks him to stop, but Jerry continues undressing her. Then suddenly there's a close-up of Cassie's face and we see that she's completely sober. So, she then sits straight and with a strong, scary voice she says, "I said, what are you doing?" And the scene ends with Jerry's super scared face. It's a very powerful first act actually. The next scene shows up Cassie while she's walking home the next morning. We can see red stains on her shirt, but we don't know if they're blood or jelly or what. Later we see that Cassie is writing Jerry's name in a little notebook. We don't know what exactly has happened to Jerry, but it seems that whatever this routine is, Cassie has been doing it for a long time. In the next scene, we see that Cassie lives with her parents. They're having breakfast together and they ask her why she was late last night. She lies and says that she had to work late in the coffee house. They know she's lying, but there's not much they can do. The next scene happens in the coffee house where Cassie is talking to her manager, who seems to be a nice and supportive boss. She's trying to convince Cassie to apply for some better jobs because she has so much potential. But Cassie says she's happy with where she is. But we can tell that's not the case with the way that she treats customers. A few days after that, we are in the coffee shop again, and a guy walks in and asks for a coffee. And then he recognizes Cassie. He introduces himself, his name is Ryan, and apparently they were in med school together. Wow. They have a funny conversation, and at the end, Ryan, who seems to be a genuinely nice guy, asks her out on a date. The next scene is about another manhunt adventure by Cassie. This time, the target is a geeky guy named Neil. Cassie is pretending to be drunk again, while Neil is telling her the geeky story of a novel he is thinking of writing while doing coke. He then forces Cassie to do coke with her. And then, of course, he starts flirting with Cassie while talking about how this soul-sucking system is meant to oppress women and forces them to wear makeup. It's ironic. After a few minutes, when Cassie looks super drunk and high, Neil starts to take advantage of her. And same as Jerry, he chooses to ignore that Cassie is saying no because she's quote-unquote drunk. And as expected, at this point, Cassie reveals that he's completely sober. This is the first time in the movie that we get to see what exactly Cassie does after revealing that she's not drunk. And it's actually not violent at all. All she's doing is basically she's trying to teach these people a lesson by pointing out to them that they're not nice guys as they claim, but there are horrible people who take advantage of women. Oh, and she has been doing this for every week for a while now. And every week, apparently, a nice guy like Jerry and Neil comes over to see if she's okay. And you know the rest of the story. In the next scene, while Cassie is adding a hash mark for Neil in her notebook, we see a childhood picture of her and another girl called Nina on the mirror. Cassie says good night to Nina in the picture. We don't know if that's her friend or sister or what. Later, we see Cassie and Ryan, the nice guy from the coffee house. They're on a date in a restaurant having a good time. We learned that Cassie was actually one of the best students in the meta school. And same as us, Ryan also doesn't know why Cassie decided to drop out. They spend the entire day together, lunch, movies, and then we see them at night walking down the street after a nice day. Then all of a sudden, Ryan says that they are actually right in front of his apartment. And he invites Cassie to come upstairs. Cassie clearly gets upset and with a very cold, sarcastic tone says, "Sure, why not?" Ryan quickly realizes that he misread the situation, but it's too late, and Cassie angrily walks away. However, the next day, Cassie goes to Ryan's office and tells him that she wants to see him again, but they need to take it slow. And Ryan seems to be totally fine with it as long as they go out. And he then makes up some silly, funny stories to change the mood, and they go out to dinner together. A few days later, and probably after going out together a couple of more times, at the coffee shop, Ryan asks Cassie if she's still in touch with anyone else from the meta school. And Cassie says no. But apparently, Ryan is still in touch with many of them. He mentions that Madison recently had twins. Cassie says she doesn't remember Madison. Ryan gets surprised and says, "But you were close, you, Madison, and that other girl." He doesn't remember her name, but we can guess that he might be referring to Nina. Then Ryan mentions another old classmate, Al Monroe, who is getting married to a bikini model. Based on the look from Cassie's face and the dramatic music in the background, we can guess that Cassie is not a fan of this Al Monroe guy. Ryan still hangs out with Al and they also work together, although he clarifies that they're not close. And from this conversation, we learn that this Al Monroe guy is not certainly a saint. In the next scene, we see Cassie looking at photos of her and Nina on her laptop. In an amazing plot in which she looks like an angel with wings, she then looks up at Monroe on Facebook and finds his "she said yes" Facebook post. And in the comment section, she sees that Madison, the girl that Ryan talked about, has commented, "Oh, my favorite two people are getting married." Cassie gets angry and closes the laptop. In the next scene, we see that Cassie is waiting for Madison in a restaurant. She had called Madison and asked her to meet and catch up apparently. While Cassie is waiting, she orders a champagne but fills her own glass with a ginger ale, so she plans to get Madison drunk. After Madison joins, we learn that they haven't met since Cassie dropped out, but they have a very friendly interaction overall. And talks about here and there while Cassie pours more and more wine for Madison. After Cassie makes her completely drunk, she tells Madison that the real reason for this meeting was to talk about why she dropped out. She asks Madison if she remembers what happened back then. From the conversation, it seems that Nina actually got raped during a party, but Madison didn't believe Nina back then because, according to Madison, she had a reputation for sleeping around. Madison still thinks that if a girl gets super drunk at parties, naturally something like this would happen, and it's basically the victim's fault. Cassie was hoping that Madison would feel differently by now. So she gets disappointed and says goodbye and leaves the super drunk Madison alone. He then goes to a man who is sitting in the bar area and gives him a room number and a key and some money and guides him to Madison. So, wow, it seems that she's asking the man to probably rape Madison. Because, of course, Madison thinks that getting drunk is a valid reason for getting raped. The next morning, we see that Madison has been calling Cassie over and over. When she finally listens to her voicemails, we hear that Madison wants to know if Cassie remembers her talking to a man, because she apparently woke up in a hotel room after the restaurant interaction. And she thinks she might have gotten raped or something. Cassie crosses out Madison's name in her notebook as the phase 1 of her revenge plan is now done. And she moves on to phase 2, someone named Walker. In the next scene, we see that Cassie tricks a very young girl into thinking that she is a makeup artist that is going to a diner to shoot a music video with a boy band. That coincidentally, it's the girl's favorite boy band. The girl gets into a car with Cassie and she locks the door. We then see Cassie alone in her old med school in the dean's office, where she has an appointment with Dean Walker, the name that we saw earlier in her notebook. She pretends that she's considering to come back to school. Dean Walker seems to be a very nice and polite person. Cassie then asks Walker if she remembers her old classmate, Nina Fisher. She doesn't. Then Cassie asks if she remembers Al Monroe. She does remember Al Monroe very well and seems to be very fond of him. Cassie tells her that back then, Al Monroe had raped Nina after a party while his friends were watching. Damn. And Nina reported this incident to Miss Walker at the time, but she chose to give the boy the benefit of the doubt because it was a he said, she said situation. Dean Walker insists that it was the right decision, as she cannot ruin a young man's life just because of some accusation, and points out the fact that if she was drunk, it was kind of the whole, it kind of makes the whole incident her fault. So at this point, Cassie tells Walker that, oh, in the interest of giving boys the benefit of the doubt, she needs to know that her daughter is now with the boys who currently live in the same room that the rape has happened 7 years ago. And, oh, they're drinking together. Walker doesn't believe her at first and tries to call her daughter, but when she finds out that Cassie has her daughter's phone, she gets super angry and starts yelling at her to find out the room number. She yells repeatedly, but finally she desperately admits that she was wrong before. Cassie points out that, yep, it's different when it's someone you love, right? And then she puts Walker's mind at ease by saying that her daughter is actually in a diner thinking that her favorite boy band will show up. When Cassie gets home that night, he sees Ryan was waiting for him by the door since they were supposed to go to movies that night together. But Cassie had forgotten. Ryan is nice about it, as always, and they decide to do it some other night. But later that night, Cassie goes hunting again in a bar. But when she's going home with a stranger while pretending to be drunk, Ryan accidentally runs into him and spots Cassie. Ryan gets super sad and disappointed and walks away. So that's over. The next scene is about the third phase of Cassie's revenge plan. This time, the lawyer who helped Al Monroe 7 years ago against Nina and forced Nina to drop the case by bullying and threatening her for a long time. To Cassie's extreme surprise, the guy remembers Nina's name very well. He's basically one of the first people in the movie that remembers Nina by her name. And it turns out because of all the similar horrible things that he had done for many years in sexual allegation cases, he had a psychotic episode not a very long ago. He reveals that there is a systematic effort in law firms for digging up dirt on victims' past by searching their social media, something as simple as a drunk photo in a party, because it can easily convince the jury that even a rape was kind of the girl's fault. He says that he hasn't been sleeping for a long time because he cannot forgive himself. Cassie, while crying, says that she forgives him. Cassie then goes to Nina's parents' house to talk to her mom. We still don't know what exactly has happened to Nina, but Nina's mom asks Cassie to just let it go and move on with her life for everyone's sake. We then see Cassie at home looking at a Facebook event, which is the bachelor's party for Al Monroe, which is the target of the last phase of her revenge plan. But instead, she decides to delete her Facebook account and also throws away her revenge notebook. She's basically taking Nina's mom's advice and letting this whole thing go. She then goes to Ryan to apologize and to assure him that the same incident will not happen again. At first, Ryan doesn't accept her apology and Cassie leaves. But shortly after, Ryan comes to the coffee shop and asks Cassie on a date. And then they kiss for the first time in a very romantic scene. Then we see several scenes of Cassie and Ryan over the next few weeks with some happy music in the background. Now they're this cute couple who are having so much fun together. We then see that Ryan is meeting Cassie's parents for the first time at their place. It's kind of awkward, but it's still a nice dinner. Ryan is being charming and funny as always, and Cassie's parents seems to like him a lot. In the next scene, we see that Ryan and Cassie tell each other, "I love you" for the first time. So life is perfect and nothing can mess this up, right? Wrong. One day when Cassie gets back home, she sees Madison is waiting for her nervously because she wants to know what exactly has happened to her that night. So do we. Cassie reveals that the guy did not touch Madison that night and just took her to bed. Basically, Cassie was just trying to teach her a lesson without actually hurting her. Madison is relieved, but she then tells Cassie that she wants to show her something. She says there's actually a video from the rape incident from 7 years ago. She gives Cassie the cell phone that contains the video. We then see Cassie's face while watching the video. It seems that it was taken from Nina while she was being raped by Al Monroe. And then suddenly we heard Ryan's voice in the background. And he is also there watching. And based on his voice, he seems to be totally okay with the whole thing. I mean, Ryan? What the hell, man? Cassie is now completely broken. She then goes to Ryan's office and shows him the video. Ryan denies knowing about it at first, but then he hears his own voice. Ryan gets super scared as Cassie threatens that she will email the video to everyone that Ryan knows unless he shares the location of Al Monroe's bachelor party. Ryan gives her the address and she leaves. In the next scene, we see Cassie is dressed up as a sexy nurse for a stripping and she's putting on makeup while waiting outside the cottage that the bachelor party is happening. This is the fourth and last phase of his master plan for revenge. He goes to the cottage and knocks on the door. Guys get so much excited to see a stripper that they don't even care that none of them know exactly who has arranged that. Al Monroe has a friend named Joe, who is a super creepy playboy, so everyone just assumes that it was probably him. Al gets a bit upset at first because her fiancé wouldn't like it, but then he goes along. Cassie asks everyone to kneel down and pours drink in everyone's mouth. He then asks Al to go upstairs. He ties up Al's hand to the bed. Al says that, "Oh, I'm a perfect gentleman and I love my fiancée," to which Cassie replies, "Sometimes gentlemen are the worst." While Cassie is getting ready to strip, Al asks her about her real name. She replies, "Nina Fisher." Al gets shocked and freaked out and says, "What kind of a sick joke is that? Nina Fisher is dead." He realized that this is a trap and asks for help. But apparently everyone downstairs are now passed out as Cassie has put some sedative in their drink, which is exactly the same thing that Joe used to do when they were in school to take advantage of girls, and probably the same thing that has happened to Nina back then. And then Al finally remembers Cassie as Nina's friend. Cassie asked Al to tell her what he did to Nina exactly. But Al keeps saying that they were all drunk because it was a party, but he insists that Nina was actually into it. At this point, Cassie reveals that, oh, there is a video of the incident. So Al realizes that, oh, this is not, there's no point in denying, and he starts to beg and cry. Cassie tells Al that Nina dropped out of the school after the incident while she was the top of the class. Cassie also dropped out to be with her and to help her. Then Cassie says after the rape incident, Nina was a different person because she always had to carry Al Monroe's name. She then picks up a surgery knife and says that now she wants Al to carry Nina's name forever. But as soon as she tries to start, Al uncuffs one of his hands and manages to get on top of her and take the knife. He then put a pillow on Cassie's face, and then in a super horrifying and painful 2.5-minute scene, he suffocates Cassie to death. We see the whole damn 2.5 minutes, which is the exact amount of time required to suffocate a person. And we hear Cassie's screams and see her effort to free up herself, which makes the scene more and more painful and agonizing. This scene is certainly the most powerful and at the same time the most painful scene of the movie. From this point on, we never see Cassie's face in the movie again. She's another faceless victim now. After killing Cassie, Al starts crying, but he cannot leave the room as his other hand is still tied up. The next morning, Joe, the creepy playboy, comes to the room while he's pretty happy and chill because he has no idea what happened last night. When Al tells him that the stripper is dead, to our surprise, without even knowing what happened, he takes Al's side and tries to comfort him by telling him that it was not his fault and it was just an accident. He also suggests that they get rid of the body and tells everyone that the stripper left last night. Al is on board with this plan, of course. We then see Al and Joe burning Cassie's body, a very powerful, dramatic, and painful scene, especially when Joe pushes Cassie's hand to the fire with his foot. After this intense, horrifying series of events, we see that Cassie's parents are talking to the police as their daughter is gone missing. But since Cassie has a history of depression, police thinks that Cassie herself has decided to disappear and nothing suspicious has happened. Then the detective goes to talk to Ryan. Ryan says that they broke up a few days ago and he hasn't seen Cassie since then. And we see that the detective has already made up his mind. As he thinks that since Cassie was not mentally stable, she probably has killed herself or something. Ryan, knowing that is not true, agrees with the detective just to put an end to everything, and doesn't mention a thing about Cassie's decision about going to Al Monroe's bachelor party. The last scene of the movie is happening in Al Monroe's wedding. We hear their vows and the speech of the best man, Joe. Ryan is also there. He seems to be a bit off, probably not knowing what exactly happened to Cassie and the video. But all of a sudden, he receives a scheduled text from Cassie in which she's asking, "Did you really think that this was over?" We then hear police's siren in the background. It turns out that Cassie had actually mailed the cell phone as well as the location of the bachelor party to the lawyer from earlier, and she asked him to follow up the case in the event of her disappearance. She knew the dangerous game that she was walking into, so she was smart enough to not to go unprepared. The police comes to the wedding and arrest Al Monroe for the murder of Cassie. We then see Cassie's final text messages to Ryan. "It is now. Enjoy the wedding. Love, Cassie and Nina."